I am being watched. Welcome everyone to Mailfuzz TV. I am Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about Person of Interest, Season 2, Episode 6. It's called The High Road. So, spoilers for the episode as always. This sees John... Why am I saying John? I always say Reese. That felt weird. Reese goes to the suburbs, and to protect, or at least find out if he should protect, Roy from the office. Of course, he's not actually that character. I'm making a joke as the actor. Yeah, the best way to describe this one is probably a history of violence. Not exactly. Like, it's not the character Roy. Sorry, I shouldn't call him Roy, right? I can't call him by a character he was in a different show. What's the credit he does here? Why is he so far down the list? Graham, right? So we're introduced to Graham, who lives with his family in the suburbs. He seems like he's a perfect normal dude. Like he has a local hardware store that he runs. He seems like he's a good husband, a good dad. There's a moment early on where you think, oh, he's meeting someone shady to get something really suspicious in an envelope. But then in the very next scene, Reese starts laughing to himself because it turns out that this envelope, the shady thing that was happening, was him getting tickets to a concert for his daughter that was meant to be a surprise for both the daughter and the mother. So very early on, it feels like, no, this dude is completely normal. There's nothing about him. But of course, out of nowhere, someone calls him a different name, and immediately I'm thinking of a history of violence. It's a little bit different in that he's not actually got a history of violence himself, seemingly. He was a safecracker. He wasn't the one necessarily doing anything particularly aggressive or anything like that. The others in the team, though, seemed like they were more willing to kill people, and he got out because he thought the job that they were going to do about 15 years ago was bad. They ended up getting arrested, and despite the fact that it's not like he ran away during the job, he told them, I'm not doing this, it's a bad idea. They blame him, and they've found him. They're now showing up. They've discovered what his alias is. He took the identity of someone who died about 14, 15 years ago, and that's kind of the backstory that we're working with in this episode, which leads to a lot of just entertaining stuff. Reese pretending to be a suburban husband, pretending to be married to Zoe, which is a really fun bit. You know, you've got Finch saying, "Hey, I've set you up with a house. I've set you up with a new wardrobe and a cover story and all that." But you're going to need to have a wife, and you know, in walks Zoe, and he kind of proposes in a weird way, in a very dry Reese-like way. That's kind of fun. Not even because the suburban side of it really changes all that much in terms of how he operates, but more so the idea that him and Zoe are just actively working together. She's actually there on the job, like she's part of the team. And she has helped out, of course, here or there as we've went, but she's always kind of helped out in her way, where she has her connections, where she's able to use her world to help the rest of the characters. This was more like, no, she's on the stakeout with Reese. She's getting involved, and at one point in the episode, she sees an opportunity to go and talk to the wife of Graham, of the subject, and get some information. She actively gets involved and is a part of the case, which is kind of fun. She even gets to meet Carter later in the episode, which was kind of an interesting moment, because I was thinking right before Carter says this, have they ever met each other? And sure enough, Carter says, hey, we have not met. Who are you? So all those things are fun. A little thing as well, Reese is pretending to be the owner of a security company who installs cameras and things like that. And halfway through the episode, the character Graham, because of something that's happened recently to his car, there was like a threatening fire that was started to destroy their car. He's having the security system put in, and of course it's Finch who's there as the employee with the overalls on, doing the actual work and calling Reese boss, which is a fun little, you know, spin on things. All of those like details of the actual case are entertaining. It does feel like a nice change of pace being in a different location. The idea that it's not as easy to tail people because he gets a parking ticket at one point for parking in the wrong place, because he's not in the city anymore. He's out of his own jungle. He's kind of in like unfamiliar territory. But obviously there's ties to his story, and that makes sense. This idea of this character who has built a life. He's not evil to his wife and daughter. He actually has built this new life. He gave himself a second chance by running away. Now, technically, he is still wanted for crimes in a different state, but he did start a new life. He seemingly has been on the straight and narrow for 14 plus years, and his wife and daughter have no idea. And the thing that ultimately goads him into doing what the bad guys want later in the episode is the threat of his family. It's them threatening to come after his daughter. So he's ultimately doing things for reasons that Reese can sympathize with. The idea that, again, we've done this before, we've done this dance a few times now in the show, but it always works to some extent, which is the idea that Reese has done things he's not proud of, and even though his was technically more official and sanctioned because it was part of an organization run by the government, he still sees himself in these characters who were down these different walks of life. They were still part of a team, they were still part of doing bad things, and then this guy found a life that Reese also wanted to find for himself, even if he wasn't sure that he wanted that at the time. It's something that he's clearly reflected on a lot. So those moments are pretty solid, and I think the big thing at the end is that Reese wants him to go back to his family life and get away with it. Like, he kind of wants him to, keep this life that you've built. You don't have to go back and pay for ancient history. He's trying to talk him into doing that, but he's at this crossroads where Graham wants to turn himself in. Like, he's not satisfied that he's still running away from this and that he's still going to have this secret. Yes, by this point at the end of the episode, he's left a letter for his wife explaining what his past is, and he's a little bit scared of facing her with that, but he makes this choice to turn himself in, like, and arguably it is a right choice that even Reese wasn't, like, rooting for. Reese clearly early on in the episode, when the bad guys show up and say, hey, we're going to do this job and you're going to come and help us, you're going to go crack this safe with us, because if you don't, we'll kill your family, kind of thing. It does set it up as if it's this moral choice that he has to make. Is he going to go and do this job, or is he going to go to the police right now and turn himself in, whatever it may be? I think obviously Reese wants him to make the right choice, but at the end of the episode, he's kind of want him to make the more sly choice. But Graham's like, no, I need to turn myself in. It's something he needs to do, and something he has to answer for what he's done in some way. And I almost wonder if it's kind of foreshadowing a point that Reese might one day get to, where he'll want to go more official. Whether or not he wants the whole operation to go more official or go against what Finch wants and turn himself in for anything he is technically guilty of. I don't think it's necessarily going to go there, but it did occur to me in the moment as Graham was walking to the police car, turning himself in, because he has to make amends for what he's done. And you could argue the next time we see him with his wife, he's under house arrest, he's made deals with the system to give evidence and turn the other guys in, and because of that, he's under house arrest as opposed to be going to prison. So he still gets to be with his family, and his wife is sticking by him. And I do have to speculate that maybe part of the reason why it was an easier choice for his wife to stick around with him was because he did do this sort of noble thing of turning himself in. There was a genuine sense of, like, earning this new life that he's built for himself, like, now in retrospect. So I think those character beats work well. And the other big thematic thing that it kind of sprinkles in here is that throughout the episode, we get stories about how the couple met, how Graham and his wife met. It sounds suspiciously a lot like how Reese met Zoe and other characters, in the sense that she says she was being kind of harassed by an asshole at a concert, and then Graham came in and pretended to be the boyfriend to sort of scare him away, and then that kind of, he was a hero, a much smaller scale hero, but he was a hero that came out of nowhere and just helped her when she was in need. And who does that describe in this show? It describes Reese. It describes the man in the suit who comes out of nowhere as a stranger and ends up saving your life. So in a weird way, I think Zoe's kind of, she's relating a lot to this woman, perhaps more than she thought she was going to. So yeah, that's I think that's fun, but then it actually has more of a purpose, because we also have the story of Zoe meeting Reese, which she kind of, you know, she smudges the details to work as a couple meeting each other. She leaves out all the part about the murder and the potential death and all that stuff. But we then have, over the course of the episode, these two stories of people meeting each other, and that ties in thematically to the flashbacks, which is some flashbacks. There's two from 2004 and then one from 2006. And it's basically some more stuff with Finch, with Ingram, and he's talking about the machine and how he's training it to spot people who are worth looking at. And to do that, he had to train it to understand people in general. So he's like, hey, like, who around here has connections? And the machine on his laptop is like, hey, this guy's related to that guy, or this person's got that. And he's showing it off, and he kind of throws it back in Ingram's face by showing Ingram that he's having an affair with a student of his. Because Ingram started off the scene by saying it's how it's rough going through this separation that's maybe going to a divorce, and then Finch kind of points out that he's having this affair, and he uses the machine to tell him that, like, hey, here's the evidence. But the interesting thing here is that the machine points out a woman in the park, and it turns out to be the woman that we've seen before, Grace, the one that Harold will go on to have a relationship with. And Finch thinks it's a bug because there's nothing off about her. There's nothing saying that she's guilty of anything, that she's got some kind of a history. It's just showing her for seemingly no reason, and he thinks it's a bug. And immediately my first thought was, is the machine trying to set him up with a woman? Is it trying to nudge him out of friendship, out of, like, you know, you're lonely? In fact, it's brought up in this very scene. Ingram points out the irony of Finch training the machine to understand people when he's the biggest introvert he's ever met. So the idea of having an introverted friend and pushing him to, hey, go talk to her, like, kind of thing, that's kind of what this felt like it was. And then, like, Finch kind of deduces it another way the next time we get a scene in this time period where he realizes that the machine's pointing her out because she is special in that she's the only one here who's completely clean. Like, there's nothing. She's got not a malicious word to say about anyone, and that makes her stand out. But I still think, at least thematically, it kind of works as that the machine's pointing this great person out because he should know about her. He should try and interact with her. He should maybe form a friendship, a relationship, whatever it may be. Whether or not you want to argue the machine is actively aiming for that specifically, I think right now, I think it's up to the audience. Maybe it's more clear whether or not the machine's capable of that at this part of the timeline. Maybe later we can definitively say, no, I couldn't have done that until later for this reason or that reason. But right now, I like believing that the machine's trying to set him up. In a good way, you know. When I realize I'm saying set up, it sounds like I'm saying set up to take the fall or set up for a crime. No, set him up as in set him up with a woman. The last flashback we get is in 2006, so it takes him 2 years to seemingly go up and talk to her. I thought in this scene when he got to her that he was going to go up and she would already know him, and it would reveal, oh, he's already been talking to her. But it seems like the first time he's spoken to her, because she seems surprised to interact with him. And I guess it makes sense timeline-wise, because they said that they were together for 4 years, and from the sounds of it, he probably wrapped up that relationship in around 2010-ish, based on previous flashbacks, if my memory serves correctly with the timeline. I don't remember exactly what she said about when he disappeared, but I think it was later on. So that would make sense that it starts in 2006 and ends in about 2010. So, you know, that's all cool. But I thought the episode did a good job of kind of like seeding in this idea. If anything, it probably did something that this show, I don't think does as much as other shows that have flashbacks, where there's one moment here where Finch is watching the security cameras and he's listening to the conversation between Zoe and Graham's wife, and it's the stories about how they met. And Finch sort of looks at the screen kind of longingly, like he's like, oh, like, and it's almost like he's actually thinking about the time he met Grace, and it leads into the flashback, which is a very normal thing to do. Like, quite often flashbacks in movies and TV, you'll go into them because something in the present day scene inspires it, and this show definitely does that thematically, but not so much in the sense of the characters thinking about it, It's a very normal thing to do, is you have the character clearly thinking about something in their past, and then you go into the past and show what they're thinking about, effectively. This show, I don't think, has typically done that, but it's interesting that it chose this moment to kind of tie the flashbacks and the present day stuff a little bit together. But it's this idea that, you know, I was almost expecting that Finch might debate Reese on if Graham deserves to have his happy life, just because it would be an opposing point of view. But I don't think he ever really does. And maybe that's just a sign of where he is now. And plus, we already kind of played those beats very recently. You know, that was it episode 2 of this season? No, it couldn't have been episode 2. It would have been 3, where Finch was, hey, this guy's a criminal. We shouldn't be protecting him. We should be protecting the girlfriend. Remember, you know, that was like episode 3 or 4. So I think we've already played those beats, so maybe that's why we don't do it again here. And maybe because, you know, he learned a lesson by the end of that episode, so it makes sense that he wouldn't be as harsh in the way that he's thinking here. And part of it because, yeah, he's seeing that this guy is living this life, and he has done for a long time now. To the point where, will he even remember how to crack safes? Does he remember how to be a bad guy, kind of thing? You know, it never feels like he's doing it because he wants to. It always feels like this, I'm doing this to protect my family. So I think all that sort of stuff throughout the episode, it weaves together quite well. Being in the suburbs is a nice change of scenery, which is pleasant. And there's some little bits of comedy that I've not even mentioned, like Zoe and Reese playing poker. She's kicking his ass at it, and you know, that's kind of fun because Reese tends to be good at things. He tends to win things, so it is kind of fun showing him, you know, make an ass out of himself. And not that he's really making an ass out of himself, he's only losing, but he's being a little cocky, right? He's being dryly cocky, as he often is, and Zoe's kind of hitting back with with a winning hand, basically. So yeah, there's a decent amount of Carter this episode. She's very much just a logistical character, though. Not really. She doesn't really have a plot. She's just kind of there to help a bunch of times. There's no Fusco this episode, which I guess makes some sense. We're out of the city for a lot of it. The actual sort of like final heist, as it were. And I say heist, it's armed robbery. It's a safe that's in like a sort of fancy penthouse style apartment. Well, it's not on the top floor, so I guess it's maybe not the penthouse, but and I know that because Reese grapples down from an apartment that's up above. But some rich guy lives here. He's got a safe full of diamonds, but the rich guy's son or nephew or whoever he is throwing a party. So the bad guys pretend to be caterers or something like that, and they break in. Conveniently don't give Graham a mask. Which almost made me think they wanted him to get caught by the police. But then that would be kind of stupid, though, because why wouldn't he just tell them everything he knows about them? So they're just planning to kill him at the end. But there's a whole thing with Reese and Zoe getting into an apartment up above for some guy she knows, so he can rappel down and he can come in. He actually swaps places with one of the other gunmen because they're all wearing ski masks except Graham, so he actually knocks one out and pretends to be one of them for a bit, whilst all the tensions going on of Graham trying to crack the safe and whatever. And Graham does get a moment where he has a choice, where he could kill the main other bad guy, the one that's really threatening him. And he kind of wants to because it'll stop him from ever coming after his family. But then, of course, he would be going to prison forever. And I think if he pulled the trigger and killed this bad guy, as much as Reese would sympathize with why he did it, I do think Reese would let Carter take him, you know, let him go through the system, because he's just, you know, he's killed someone. He's made an active choice to kill someone, and in this moment, it is not self-defense. He has a choice, and he ultimately makes the right one. And hell, maybe even the fact that he was thinking about doing it at all is perhaps why he felt he needed to turn himself in to sort of like, you know, cleanse himself and, you know, go back to his life. If that's an option, then he has to be able to live with himself, and maybe the temptation to even do it in the moment is something that he has to work through by making amends. Not even with the justice system, but just for himself, just to himself. So yeah, I mean, I think that stuff is pretty solid. It definitely feels like a lower stakes episode for this show, right? Obviously, there's people in danger. There's someone's conscience at stake, and sometimes that makes for some of the best episodes. We go all the way back to episode 4 of season 1 with the sister try to find her sister's killer, and try to fighting for her conscience. Here we kind of have it as well with this character. Always enjoy that. But it's definitely lower stakes overall. It feels like a nice little side story to sink your teeth into. It leads into some of the character themes that we're playing with. But, you know, it isn't a big plot episode or a big mythology episode. It's a more straightforward standalone character story that once again feeds into the themes of the characters, but is relatively case of the week. But it's an enjoyable one. So, you know, I don't think it's going to rate like on anyone's top list by any means for the show, but at the same time I think it's perfectly solid, and I have very little to complain about, honestly. I like, as much as I am not raving jumping from the rooftops over this episode, I don't have anything to really say as a negative. It's a good episode of the show. So let me know what you thought of this episode in the comments below. Like and subscribe, all that stuff helps out a bunch. And of course, you can support all the content over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and get some bonuses. TV-wise, I do a review of Columbo once per month. The 4th episode of that just went out this past weekend, so go check that out. But if you want to, of course, and help keep all the content coming. But that is me, so thank you once again for watching or listening. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?